Well guys, as the video thumbnail suggests, I'm going to take the Mini out for a nice drive, let you see it driving on boost for the first time. So I'll tell you a little bit about the car first, its history, its background, what I've done to it, and then I'll show you it on boost on an open road, because I've never done that before. Well guys, here we are out in the Mini for, well, it's the first time we've been out in it for a few years really. It's been laid up while you've probably seen I've been doing Mark's Cooper S. Now we're actually going out for a proper drive in it. So just a bit about the background of the car. Bought it in 2003 as an absolute wreck. Anthony, who's behind the camera, was going to buy it if I didn't, so that pushed me into buying it, even though it was absolutely horrendous. It was rotten everywhere. You turned the ignition with a screwdriver because there's a key snapped in it, and it blew smoke everywhere behind it. But ended up buying it, and between 2004 and 2008/9 we did a full bodywork restoration, full paint job at Ponfield Bodyworks back at the time, and it had an Avon Bar Turbo 5-port in it to start with, which was a very good engine. Moving slightly forward, I decided I liked the idea of the twin cams that Specialist Components were doing. So I built Specialist Components, used all their parts, built up a separate engine with the twin cam head on, and that went in the car in about 2016, 2017, something like that. Got it rolling roaded, and it made very, very poor figures on the rolling road. It would only boost at around about a bar. It didn't matter how much you turned the bleed valve up, you could only get a bar boost. So right away we knew something was wrong. But I left it because it drove nice, it was smooth, it was comfortable, so I left it. And then, as you'll have probably seen in videos just last year, I decided enough was enough, out came the engine, and we did some little upgrades. One of them upgrades being we changed the cam timing. So you set the cam timing at top dead, and we set it at 2 mil of lift as per the build manual. What I didn't take into consideration was that's for a naturally aspirated engine, and this is turboed. And when I got in touch with John Kimmins at Specialist Components, he told me that it should be about between 0.8 and 1 mil of lift at top dead. So while the engine was out, we did that, fitted a new cam belt. But another major thing was the turbo, which is a GT17, a Garrett GT17, we had to spin the housing round to suit this application. And due to that, the bracket that holds the actuator was in the wrong place. Now if I'd went to weld it on a new bracket at that time, that would have invalidated the warranty of the turbo because it was brand new. So I decided just to make a bracket, a makeshift bracket, which was a bit flimsy, and it came off the existing bracket, swooped round, picked up the actuator and held it in its new position. The problem with that was, under boost, I think what was happening was the boost was pushing the actuator on its bracket, moving the actuator across, so we were losing all the boost right down the exhaust. And according to John Kimmins as well, that's exactly what was happening with the cam timing being at 2 mil. Apparently these turboed engines don't like overlap. So we've now got 0.8 mil, and we've got the actuator now mounted on a solid welded bracket onto the housing. The turbo is now 3-4 year old, maybe even older, I can't think. So there's no issue in welding the bracket onto it because its warranty is long gone. So now we've got the actuator solid mounted, we've got the timing right, and when I drove it for the first time with all that done, I couldn't believe the difference. We're now running at about 8 psi as it is now, and it's phenomenally quick compared to how it was previously. So yeah, it's all been good stuff. So obviously anyone thinking about building one of these engines, it can be as expensive or as cheap as you make it. So therefore, what I mean by that is, if you go to the likes of Specialist Components, who to me are extremely good, and you buy all their kit, the conversion kit alone is about £1,000. You'll pay anywhere between £300 and £500 for a head. Then you've got to take into consideration that you need pocketed pistons to clear the valves. It can add up, but if you're good with tools, if you can run a milling machine, if you can run a lathe, make a lot of them parts yourself. So an engine build to this standard could cost you anywhere between 8 and 10 grand. Or if you're very, very good with the tools, you could probably do it for maybe 2 or 3, I would imagine. Just bear in mind, you do not have to use throttle bodies. You could run it on bike carbs, you could run it on Webers, you could even still run it on the original Mini Dizzy. So all these are things that could make it cheaper for you. So anyways, I've talked a bit about the history of the car and what we've done with it. So when I get some open road, I'll let you see the car on boost for the first time, and you'll hear all the kind of noises that it makes. In fact, I've got a little bit of leeway just now, so let me show you. So there we go, guys. That's our little run out. On the way back, we actually pulled into a lay-by and we turned the bleed valve up. The bleed valve is just right there. You can see it with the little pen mark on. We turned it half a turn and that took it from 8 psi boost to 12. And it was an absolute animal on 12 psi. Keeping it in a straight line was quite fun. So yeah, it's really nice to get back out in it again. It really is. That is a little bit of a view of the engine for anyone who wants a closer look. So full spec is obviously the BMW twin cam 16 valve head. It's got the specialist components, throttle bodies, billet throttle bodies and uprated injectors. It's got the specialist components, plenum chamber. It's got an MR2 intercooler which is all plumbed in. I had to modify the intercooler to make it suit this application. It's got 18cc pistons with the pockets for the valves, light and flywheel, vernier cam, exhaust and inlet pulleys. Trying to think what else. It's got standard LT cams, so it's just standard bike cams. You can get an uprated set of cams for turbo if I wanted to push even more power, but I'm not that fussed. It's got a alloy rad. It's got an oil cooler. I think I can't remember if it's a 10 or 13 row oil cooler down the bottom. It's got a single grey clutch, which is very heavy. I wouldn't like to see what the double grey was like. Bailey dump valve, GT17 turbo, and I would estimate at 12 psi this must be knocking on the door of 200 brake horsepower. It really must, because it's phenomenally quick. So yeah, that's just a little bit of a view of the engine, guys. The one thing I'm always worried about, I'm quite happy that the engine's pretty bulletproof, but it's got a jackknife 6-speed gearbox, which are like hen's teeth, probably rarer than hen's teeth if I'm honest. And a lot of people told me when I built this car many years ago that gearbox wouldn't last long with the type of power I was putting through it. Here we are many years later, touch wood, I'll give my head a tap. I haven't had any issues with it, but it's always in the back of my mind. When you put your foot down, it snakes all over the road. It pulls like hell. You can't see it on the video, but it really pulls. And that's putting a lot of power through a 6-speed straight cut gearbox. So if that gearbox ever goes wrong, if we ever strip any teeth, or whatever damage it might cause, I know for a fact I can't get the parts for that gearbox. They only made a limited few of them. I've only ever seen one other guy. I think he was one of the guys who worked at Mini World magazine, and he had a 6-speed on his build. He had a really nice build. I think I've seen it at the IWM show many years ago at Longbridge, and he's the only other one I've ever seen. So I know if I damage that gearbox, it's either lights out or it would cost an absolute fortune for somebody like Quaife for example, to make the parts to put it right, it would be ridiculous. It would be absolutely ridiculous to sort out. So I'm always worried about destroying that gearbox because I love it and I don't want to lose it. So it's always in my mind when I'm turning the boost up about that gearbox giving way, which, like I say, touch wood it hasn't, but there's always that one time. So anyway guys, I'm going to leave that there. Thanks very much for watching. Hope you enjoyed the video. I'll see you very shortly, which will probably be Mark's Mini getting reassembled.